I'm joined now by former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, with much to discuss. Sir, I'll begin with the grim question of a stalemate would not normally sound like wishful thinking, but when you hear NATO sources say that, as we reported, is that wishful thinking, or is that a sign that, according to people close to this, it could be a stalemate, which, while horrific, is not what Putin bargained for?
Well, stalemate would be a fantastic outcome, because wars tend to end in two ways, all right? Either one side wins or a stalemate. And a stalemate creates the permissive conditions, I would say the preconditions for an actual negotiated settlement. So I hope these reports are correct. It's hard to judge. Putin still has a lot of his army left, but the ones that he has used so far have not done well. I hope we are moving to a stalemate as a precursor to a real negotiated solution.
Yeah, I hear you on that. When you look at Russia warning that they may cut off all sort of diplomatic ties to the U.S., people who aren't as versed in this as you might say, like, who cares? I mean, look what they're doing, whatever. In fact, it's a much more complex international order. And the very people who believe in diplomacy, like yourself or the President Obama who you serve, believe that you keep open ties with all kinds of horrific folks precisely to hopefully use diplomacy to prevent more horrors. With that in mind, how do you view this threat from Russia? And do you think that it was worth it for Biden and then his aides to talk up this war criminal thing when, as you know, the United States doesn't even recognize the ICC? So there's not a lot of deliverable. I discussed this with one of the diplomats last week who's inside the administration. Not a lot of deliverables on that tough talk, and it seems to have a high cost.
Well, it does have a high cost. We want to have diplomatic channels open. It would not be good for the Russian government to send our ambassador home and for us to send Ambassador Antonov home. That would be not a good outcome. We want channels of communication. That said, you can have channels of communication even if you don't have diplomatic relations. And to be honest, what I want to know more about are our generals speaking. I want to know if General Milley is speaking to General Gerasimov. That is a channel that in other crises, Georgia 2008, for instance, when there was no communications between the State Department when Russia invaded Georgia, we still had that channel open. And that channel is important because we need to know, are they serious about some of these really crazy things that Putin has hinted at, especially with regards to nuclear weapons. So we want the channel open if we can. But I don't think it's the end of the world if they choose to send Ambassador Sullivan home for a while.
So when you see the Russian side, I got a headline here, Moscow ties close to, quote, rupture after the war criminal remarks, Russia's foreign ministry summoning your successor, Ambassador Sullivan, about this. The flip side, I guess, is what, if anything, does the Biden administration get by calling Putin a war criminal in public?
First of all, let's be clear about the whataboutism here. Putin every day tells his people on TV that the United States is supporting Nazis in Ukraine in a coup, supporting Nazis and war criminals. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an international lawyer, but these seems like without the kind of ridiculous things that they say about President Biden. They say about our country. They say about me. I just think it's a lot of that he said a war criminal on record compared to everything Putin says all the time. I don't see this as a big inflammatory thing by President Biden. He said what he meant. I worked for him when he was the vice president. He tends to do that. I don't think there's any harm. And look at the photos you're showing right now. How can you look at what President Putin is doing, a deliberate strategy to kill civilians, and say anything else but what the president said? Sometimes speaking the truth matters more than diplomatic niceties.
Yeah, I think you make a very clear case, especially for those who are looking at this, comparing the words, because they literally are calling the Jewish leader of Ukraine a Nazi. So as you say, they have zero credibility whatsoever. Exactly. The other nuance I'm offering, again, for your analysis, our viewers have come to rely on you given your experience. The other piece, though, that I'm emphasizing is, of all the ways to go about it, Biden is using international legalistic terminology that this administration and the last one, so neither party in this country, in our U.S. diplomacy, has endorsed international law, ICC-style tribunals. So it's sort of like, where is this headed, or was he just speaking out of pocket? That's the nuance I'm sharing. I have one other thing to ask you, but I'll let you respond to that beforehand if you want.
Well, I think you raise a good point. It is not leading to any conclusion, precisely for the reasons you just described. I think it's rhetorically and symbolically important, but is it an actual accusation, an indictment by the president? The president does have the right to indict anybody. And most certainly, I don't believe it's in our national interest to seek an indictment right now, because at one point, hopefully in this war, President Putin will have to negotiate with President Zelensky. I'd remind you that we did that with Milosevic. The Dayton Accords, he was an interlocutor in that negotiations, and we want to have that option open. You know, the ultimate goal here, in my view, for the United States and for any country in the West, or any country that cares about humanity, for goodness sakes, is to end this war. And so every policy that achieves that goal is the ones that should be pursued, and those that don't advance that goal are ones that that should wait for later.
Copy. And you lay that out with great precision. The final item is this headline here, really disturbing from the New York Times when you look at the other possibility. If it's not a stalemate, as we discussed, they compare, for example, what a siege looks like. One of the largest urban battles of the century, the Times reports, was the 9-month siege of Mosul in Iraq to oust what were then the Islamic State occupiers. That's 70 square miles with a wartime population of under 1 million. The Times analysis here notes that's a fraction of the numbers for Kyiv, the pre-war population over 3 million. How concerned should everyone be that if there is not a stalemate or some other off-ramp, this is a multi-month siege of Kyiv that the Russian military is considering?
It's my worst nightmare. That's exactly what I worry about. It will go on forever. President Zelensky's made it very clear he's not leaving. And that means the soldiers that are defending him will fight every corner, every floor of every building. And we know that these kinds of wars can go on a long, long time. That one of the most moving events I did as ambassador, Ari, was I went to the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Stalingrad. And the Battle of Stalingrad was also one of these horrific wars. 2 million died that were fought street to street, sniper chasing soldier. And that appears like it could be an outcome. I hope there's a settlement before it gets to that.
Understood, and we wanted your perspective on that. Ambassador McFaul, tough times. Always appreciate you making time for us, sir.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.